today I'm going to give a talk about 10 reasons why you should write that test. Before beginning, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Minibar and all the amazing organizers who are making sure that this operates as optimally as possible and giving a lot of us in the community a voice to share all the things that we're passionate about. So my name is Ahnaf Prio. I don't have a name badge, so there might be some other person out there with the same super long name. If you're out there, please let me know. I'd love to meet you. And thanks for, I guess, stealing my name badge. But yeah, so I work for Secure and Financial, which is a Fortune 500 financial company in downtown St. Paul. I lead a group of engineers over there where we build web apps and a mobile app for customer-facing applications. I've been part of it for 3.5 years. Pretty amazing gig, enjoying every bit of it, where you get to build features every day. Because if there's anything you should know about me, it's that I love building things. I fell in love with it back in 2017, and I just didn't stop chasing that entire feeling. I'm also the CTO of Tableau, which won Emerging Startup of the Year last year. We're a food reservation app that is trying to help restaurants bring back business into the Twin Cities and the Midwest area. So I just wanted to give a little bit more background. When I said I love building things, what do I mean by that and how did that happen? Well, back in 2017, I was going to the U and I was ready to drop out. I was not good at my major. I was a physics major and I was terrible at it. And I spent the summer in New York where I was like, all right, this is that last summer I'm going to go visit and hang out for a little bit and then go back to Bangladesh, where I'm originally from, because college wasn't working out. And I started working for that summer in Manhattan in the 42nd Avenue at this I Love New York gift store. I worked there selling souvenirs. I Love New York t-shirts, hats. They say you're supposed to come here and study. I was just selling stuff on the road in Manhattan, pretty far from what I was supposed to do, right? And then as I was there, I realized the store did not have any online presence at all. I've never coded in my life, and I was like, this makes no sense. Maybe we can make a web portal for you to sell your stuff. The owner actually had hotels all around the tri-state area, so I was like, even if you put a couple of leaflets down with your website, maybe you can sell stuff. Well, he was like, well, can you build it for me? And that was the first time I actually incorporated the idea of building something on the web, or coding per se, to get something done. And I kept chasing it. I was like, oh my God, I love building things. I built them a website. I came back to college and said, hey, you know what? I want to change my major. I want to be a computer science major because I want to keep building things. I really enjoy this. Suddenly, from a person who did not like being at college, I was staying up late until 1 a.m., 2 a.m., just trying to make sure that I'm building, because it didn't feel like homework anymore. It was an amazing experience. So I was building apps left and right, building a website, got an internship, and I was building like a music streaming app. I also built an Angular app back in college for our software design class, and I loved building things, right? So I kept on building more and more stuff. None of these stuff were things that people wanted me to build. I was like, let's just keep on building it. I built an Alexa bot, tried to build a party app for all our college kids. I even tried to make a Tinder auto swiper, because I was like, you know what? I just enjoy building it. But as I've been on this journey for the last couple of years, something that has brought back to me over and over again from that first time I started taking that first class, and when my professor told me you should write that test to verify that function works, is that I don't like writing tests. I'm just not that person, right? I like building things. When I'm trying to build something, the customer is not going to interact with the test. Why am I going to write that test? Like, no, this is time that I could be spending to build more and more features, right? Tests are tedious, they slow me down, I don't like writing them, I gotta mock certain values, do this, do that. It just like isn't fun. Why would I spend time on it? But as I was being forced to write these tests in class, in the college classes by my professors, and when I joined Secure and by my tech lead, I started learning about how many times it can actually save your time as well. It was like kind of like life-saving a couple of times when I was like writing these features, where before even release I get to figure out that, hey, this feature is probably not going to work, and I only found it because I wrote that test. So as I've been on this journey of like going from hating tests to liking them, I just wanted to come here and talk about why I think they're important And even though if you don't like it, you should probably write them. So no matter if you write tests before the writing code or if you write them both at the same time, the practice leads you to anticipate edge cases. What if the reference is null? What if that data is not initialized yet? How the code could be broken? When you write tests, you take the perspective of the code that will consume your code. What I mean by that is when I'm trying to write a feature, it's very easy as developers just to go heads down, be like, I want to build this, I want to write a function that's going to call this function, who's going to do this, and that's it. Is this showing up? Is this working? Yes. How many times do we actually think about how the actual feature is going to be consumed? Well, that is the main value, isn't it? We're not supposed to be writing code willy-nilly just for fun. Chances are, because you're writing it for your job, or even for your personal projects, you're trying to solve a problem. You're trying to create value. And the value can only be created when someone consumes your code in the meaningful way it's supposed to be consumed. Writing that test gets you into the habit of getting a holistic approach of the behavior that you're going to implement. This way, ambiguities you get from requirements became obvious and are immediately taken into account when code is written the first time. So you get to spot those corners earlier on in the process rather than actually releasing it to production. A lot of times, you don't even realize when you're writing that feature how the customer is going to behave with that, interact with that feature. An example is, and thank you Reddit for giving me this super funny example, is someone made this floater cup, right? They were like, it's summer, this sounds a really nice idea. People are out in their pool, everyone loves flamingos. Let's have this flamingo floater that could actually float this cup. So the builders, I assume were like, all right, build a flamingo, make a hole in it. It can hold that cup. And this is what happens. They never thought about how it's going to be consumed. So we don't want that. And if it went through a proper testing process, probably it would have been caught. I don't think we can transpose this example exactly into software, but you guys get the gist. The other things that actually writing tests actually enforces you is to ask yourself, did you meet all the acceptance criteria for the feature to be built? Did you do your due diligence? When someone comes up to me, when a product owner and a BA and my job tells me that, hey, I want to build this feature, half of the time, more than half of the time, it's a gigantic list of all the different things one little thing is supposed to do. When I'm at my full-time job at Securian, there's 20 to 30 different types of user bases that interact with our applications, right? So different kinds of users who have different products. And we need to make sure when the code is out there in production, it interacts in the best way possible to all of those things. So when you're writing those tests, typically developers who don't write tests and see them as time loss, there might be a chance that you miss out on very key specifications. By doing test-driven development or writing tests for each of the different acceptance criteria kind of enforces that habit of thinking that, hey, if I'm building this feature, let's think about all the different ways it can interact, and let's make sure that when I'm putting this out there, it actually meets all the acceptance criteria. And more importantly, acceptance criteria are so vague. Business analysts and product owners and people who want us to build features will come in and define what they want in a language that, cannot be comprehended by a computer. If it could be, there would be no need for developers, right? Our entire job is to see the business problems that are given to us, or any kind of problems, and create solutions. And a lot of those times, it's very easy to lose stuff in translation. So by writing some tests and making sure that each of the acceptance criteria have their own tests, we can make sure that the feature that is being shipped out is actually covering all grounds. One of the other reasons I think writing tests is a really good practice, it also enforces this habit of trying to get better design. Students in software engineering have a lot of fun imagining and implementing pure algorithms that produces outputs from inputs. But in the real world, most code written depends on the complex infrastructure like UIs, databases, networks. One key difficulty is to identify early what should be abstracted and what should not be abstracted. There's been often time when I've been trying to write tests, okay, this is how my code is going to actually be consumed, as I'm writing things through, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again. Maybe this could be abstracted out, right? I have gone through that entire journey where just writing those tests, and as I'm hating it, I've learned that, maybe my code could be a little cleaner. My code could be abstracted out a little better so that the quality and the maintenance value of it is going to be better. One of the other things that I also want to talk about is often enough when our code is written and the feature goes into deployment, we will have tickets. We will have, there is always bound to be something going wrong, right? People are going to create tickets. The customer did not interact with the application like it's supposed to. And then I get this ambiguous ticket that says, this customer had this, this, and this. And now starts like an entire 5-minute to 20-minute to 2 hours to 4 hours journey of where all of us are just sitting down and trying to figure out what actually went wrong. Is it wrong with all the users? Is it wrong with only specific users? By writing those codes, by writing tests, I've often enough been able to pinpoint what actually went wrong a little better. If I have tests written out for all the different kinds of interactions, I can actually pinpoint exactly where, okay, so this user had a bad experience. Let's see if this is affecting other users as well. Rather than going a regression test of all of my code and all of my features, I could probably write that automated suits and be like, okay, this is where it's wrong and it's only affecting these users. It also enforces a better habit of documentation. When I say that, it's like when you're writing those tests, you know that there's like multiple different ways of interactions. So you'll probably need to, as I'm writing this, maybe some people, when they're visiting my code base, will not know that this is how the code is to be interacted with. So you're probably going to write that documentation. You're spending more time in the code base to begin with to get that increased quality while you're writing this test. So I'm pretty sure it enforces that habit of documentation as well. It also allows better maintenance of the code base. More importantly, it also allows you to quantify your confidence in the tests and the code base that you write. So if someone comes up to you and tells you, okay, how confident are you in your code base that everything that you're writing is interacting as efficiently as possible? I don't know, pretty confident. But you can't quantify it, right? But when I have like an entire suite of tests running against my entire code base to where it's interacting with it and it's verifying that it's always passing, I can actually tell you with this much test coverage, I am this confident that if the user is interacting with my code in these possible ways, I think things will not break. This is something that I've not been able to do if I didn't write tests. It also allows a regression of all features to be completed way, way, way faster. Chances are when you're interacting with a code base and writing codes, it turns into this complex, gigantic monster that has multiple features. Yes, in the earlier days, in the earlier stages of the project, it's pretty easy to be like, okay, we have only 10 features. Let's regression test it, right? Let the user, let the QA person, or let me test out all the 10 features. But what if it increases to 20? All right, I can still do it. It's going to take me double the time. What if your code base now has 50 features or 70 features? Are you going to actually manually test all of them over and over again every time you release? It's just not efficient. Writing like an automated suite of tests will probably allow the better regression of all the features to be completed faster. It's just more efficient. You can also now refactor with confidence. Often enough, like we all know what code you write today in like 2 months, that could end up being tech debt because like, oh, it's using a deprecated library now, or it's something that needs to be updated. How can you refactor or upgrade without knowing that you're not breaking everything, right? We want to go to the next stage, but often enough, and I've interacted with legacy software, without tests, people are like, I don't think you want to touch that. I don't think you want to upgrade that. Because if you're going to touch that, and if you want to upgrade that, maybe you can fix that, but all the features are going to break. Chances are you won't even know what features you broke, right? So first of all, that's an entirely different story that these people are building a deck of cards, like a castle made out of a deck of cards, and they're telling you not to touch it. But the fact that you won't even know what you break, it's kind of scary, right? So by having an entire suite of tests, you can actually now refactor with confidence. Like I was writing a feature where we're building we're building a feature where we're using DynamoDB as our database, and I was using the JavaScript SDK library that was V2, and we wanted to move to V3. And I was like, okay, this is a better decision, it's more optimized, there's enhancements being made. But without tests, I don't even know what I'm gonna break, right? It allows you to upgrade, update, and then figure out exactly pinpoint where things are breaking, so you can refactor those parts too. Without a set of tests, you probably need to do that same thing again, like regression test all of the things that you've done to verify that things are working. Also, you can also now refactor with confidence, right? Because, release with confidence. Chances are when you deliver that 11th feature, you don't want the other 10 features to break. Every time we were told to write a feature, it's on top of the customer experience that the customers are already experiencing. Without tests, how do you know things that the new code you wrote is not breaking every other thing before? It's just simply more scalable. Like you cannot be, when the product owner asks you to write a new feature, they're not asking you that, hey, write this code and that's the only thing you want. They want everything and that added thing. And you need to make sure nothing is broken. So having an automated test suite, I can probably say with some confidence that when I'm releasing that code, it's not actually breaking the other features. We also have like a faster delivery of features, and when I say that, it's kind of, so this is the part where like people argue with me the most. Faster delivery of features? No, it doesn't. You're spending so much time writing those tests. What do you mean there's a faster delivery of features here? But at the end of the day, you have to understand, like, if you don't get yourself into the habit of writing those tests to verify that the code you write is not breaking the features beforehand, it's just going to create more bugs, and it's going to just bog you down. So for my startup, when we started writing our code to deliver features, I did not write any tests at all. I was like, okay, you know what? We just need to deliver features, so we need to just get our MVP out of the door. And it worked great. I was writing features like twice as fast as my full-time job where I was forced to write tests. We wrote like 4 or 5 features, everything's working. And then about the 1.5 year mark, now that they were like, okay, let's write more features. Every time I touched something, something else broke. It was like, okay, I released this feature, okay, let's do a payment enhancement feature on our code base, on our app, and we did it. And I broke 2 other reservation-related features. There's like no way to tell, because like, yes, we should be more cognizant of the code we write, and if you're cognizant enough, maybe you do not need tests, but do you really want to take that gamble? Because I did. I was like, you know what? It's okay, I'm not going to write these tests for my code base. And I had to go back and write them all, and now I deliver way, way faster. The reason being is it wasn't worth it. I was writing that one code and then creating 2 bug tickets. I delivered that feature on the first week, but then I spent the next entire week trying to fix the other 2. You keep coming back because you just don't know. Because you can't, in your mind at all time, think about all the different edge cases that can be possible. You cannot think about all the different ways your code can interact, because if the code base gets complex, what we do is like building on top of things. It's just the nature of the beast. Things are going to get more complex, and you're going to be always asked to write more and more features. And the more you write, the more chances are you're going to break something, because things interact. So it does get better. So what I wanted to say was, after the first 1.5 years in the code base for my startup where I didn't write tests, I hated the next 2 months where I was like, I had no tests to begin with. I was not delivering features as fast because I was like, wait, hold a minute. We need to write tests for all the features we wrote before, because every time I touch something, something else breaks, and we cannot be pushing to production with breaking stuff, right? So for the next 2 months, I was like trying to play catch up, but as soon as we got there, it did get way, way better. Just like when you write feature-driven feature code, there's patterns that you can repeat, and you get better as you build on top. Chances are, as you develop your test suites, you're going to realize it's going to be repeatable as well. It does get better as you go because you understand how all the different ways you can interact with the code, how the customer interacts with the code base, and you just know that you can copy over or like implement the same patterns you've done for the other features. Also, discussions have been so much better right now when I'm talking to business people during our sprint planning or grooming, where they're like, okay, we want to build these features. In the back of my mind, I could look at all the test scenarios and be like, huh, you know, that might work with that customer base, but for this user base, that interaction is a little different. Now you have an entire set of code that not only delivers features, but also an entire set of code that talks about how your feature is being interacted with. The discussions are way better, and yeah, no one's gonna go up to 100% test coverage because that's, I feel like, never gonna. It's the dream, but I don't think that's what we should shoot for. So ask yourself, how complex is your code base, and how much testing does actually give you the confidence to find that sweet spot to deliver features and not take as much time, but also get that scalability component in there. So yeah, it does get better. So if anyone asks you that, hey, would writing tests actually slow me down? Tell them no. In the long run, it does pay dividends. And if I can talk about 10 different reasons why you should write that test and still get done early with my talk, I think you guys can also write those tests and deliver features just as early. Thank you guys. My name's Ahnaf. If you need to find me, email me at ahnafi.com. I'm at Ahnaf in GitHub and LinkedIn as well. Definitely enjoyed a lot. Any questions? So for right now, we do not. So right now we have a bunch of unit tests and also integration tests that are running on the every time we generate a build. So on the runner for the pipeline, as well as when we're doing local development, we do that. This is for the startup. We do not have automated end-to-end tests using Selenium for the startup, but for Securian, which has more resources, we do have an entire suite of a QA department who actually maintains that end-to-end test. And then as developers, we write our own unit tests and integration tests. Any other questions? Yes.
How do you generate test data or manage it?
That is like such a difficult task, but it does get better. So for the startup I've mocked all of it. I use like tools like mock adapter to be like, okay, if you're going to call this API, let's assume this is the different interactions that the API is going to give us. So I stub it out. Test data maintenance is pretty difficult, to be really honest with you. But at the end of the day, once you get started, I think it's easier to continue, because the other side of the spectrum is I don't maintain test data at all and do not have tests that are actually meaningful. So I think it makes more sense to do a little bit more effort and actually maintain your test data. For our, that's for the startup. For Securian, they actually, the team that I'm part of, we actually used something, what is it called? Imposter services. So we actually use service virtualization to actually mock out. We have an entire test environment where, like, instead of calling those APIs, we actually call a different server that always has that data persisting. Because test data, we had a lot of issues because different teams, if you interact with different teams, they need to now maintain their test data. And they need to do their updates, and sometimes they will delete it. So we just thought, hey, how about we start maintaining a little bit from our side? So we created our entire, we call it an imposter service. I don't know why we call it imposter, but it's not the real data, it's the fake data. Yes?
So in terms of like testing for UI, how important is it, say, to like, make sure you have tests in like for two individuals or interact aspects of the UI as opposed to just data randomly selected like the API compared to highly something. Because in forever, people are very strict on testing in terms of like the back end side and
Mm-hmm.
customization, but when it comes to UI, there's pretty much nothing going on. And but I just wonder what's the
Yeah, I think it's I think it's very very important that you have some form of testing on the UI side as well. And there's so many amazing tools out there right now to actually help you to do those things. We use React testing library because our application uses React, and the web app, the mobile app is React Native, so you can use React testing library for both. But going back to the original question, I think it's very important because as much as, yes, your APIs are being tested and you write integration tests, do your customer actually engage with your APIs? No. They engage with that browser, with your DOM elements and your web app, right? So to make sure that we have tests that when you actually click on a button, that modal pops up is very, very important, and something that it can be done like with minimal effort. Like the way that I've been doing it in our teams right now is we assign data test IDs as like a prop, and then every time we're delivering a feature, we're saying, okay, render the entire application, this is where they are, and we mimic like, oh, fire an event, you click this button, and then this pops out. Is the user, we also do assertions, like when the backend data is coming through this, is this what the UI is rendering? Because often enough, if the backend JSON is like returning all these values, we just don't show that. We show it in a meaningful format where we destructure it. We need to verify it's being done in the right way possible. What if your backend returns a null value? Are you just not going to show the UI? So you got to actually think about those things. And writing those tests actually gives me more confidence on the UI side, even more than the backend side, that every time the user interacts, that they're interacting it in a meaningful way, right? But there is like a slippery slope there too, like where it's like, how much test data, how much testing is actually good testing? Like, when do I stop? Should I start writing tests now? We're like, oh, make sure that the CSS property display none is in there, right? So you got to find that sweet spot, because I think if that's a core functionality that the user actually cares about, you should probably do it. I've written tests where I've written code where on the UI side, if a user interacts, presses this button, and then does this, then this modal or this box or table disappears. So I would write a test that says, hey, when they press this button and do this, the data test ID of this data table that is supposed to be disappear is no longer on the DOM at all. So I actually make sure that like when the user, now I'm tracing how the user consumes my feature and also verify that it works. Does that answer your question? Any other questions?
Got another one.
Yes.
How do you approach, I guess, things that are maybe not quite functional, like performance and load?
Yeah. So we also try to experiment with that, where it's like, okay, should I just only write tests about functional stuff, or do performance-related ones too? So there are libraries out there. My experience with it has been very minimal, but Lighthouse, which actually allows you to check on the UI side, that hey, is this rendering at this time, or like how much? So you can actually write tests now around that. When the page renders, is the performance this and this? I've been interacting a lot recently with accessibility-related things, where like we did an accessibility audit and we realized, oh my God, we kind of dropped the ball on that one, huh? And we should probably be more cognizant of the feature going forward that's accessible to everyone. So that is not kind of functional. That's kind of like performance, not performance, but on that realm. So we figured out that there's Axe Core actually had a library where you can actually now integrate with Jest, and when you render something, verify that those tags are in there, the area labels are in there. So for performance, we have been trying to do that. On the back-end side, we have been trying to think more about performance. We haven't found a solution yet, but the idea is to see if we can write tests that when you actually hit our back-end servers, when we bring back all the data, transpose the business logic, add stuff, it's still less than 4 seconds or 3 seconds. We haven't gotten there yet. We're focusing on the performance and accessibility-related testing stuff on the front end, but hopefully sometime soon, it will be really nice to have that on the back end and the API side as well. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm pretty new to testing. It's one of those things I know I should do. I know it's the right thing to do. It's hard to get started. It's very overwhelming. So I've been reading a lot about it, and is outside-in testing where you sort of start with an end-to-end test, write a failing
Yep.
then drop down to the unit level, write the failing test. Anyway, is that sort of the de facto way of testing, or is that sort of a new?
I don't think there is any de facto way. You'd be surprised that there are the number of projects and teams that actually write tests is very minimal compared to people who don't write tests. So we haven't gotten there yet. I think it's like going to be an ongoing battle and you need to find your sweet spot, right? Like how much does it make you, how much confidence do you want? How much confidence are you okay with it? So when you know that, so you should pick like, okay, how much effort do I want to put into it, right? Maybe you don't want end-to-end because that's slowing you down and you want to deliver features faster. You want to just stop at integration tests or unit tests. And I've been part of teams where it's like the de facto rule, you gotta write end-to-end tests and it's like not a separate team handling it. You have to write your own Cypress tests and everything or else they will not approve the PRs. And I've been in teams where the code base was like 1 million lines and they had one test in there that checks if the component renders, which is the de facto create React app test. I'm like, wow, right, right? So, and I think that team was not comfortable with that. And they did not want to write tests at all. They were like, we're okay with the fact we will not have confidence. And there are teams that just write unit tests. They're like, this is the sweet spot we want. We have some really good QAs. They do their job. I think for us, it makes sense to just write the unit test to get in, to verify this level of confidence and move on. So I think you should just start with writing a couple of basic unit tests. And since you're just getting into it, and like write the test, it's gonna fail, write the code, it's gonna pass, and see if you like it, if that's enough confidence you want. If you want to move forward more and your code is getting more complex, then go to the next stage. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you guys for coming to my talk. Again, if you see another person with a name tag that says Kondoker Ahnaf Prio, tell him to meet me. All right. Thanks.